sending dogs on people, having dogs bite people, having them come back. I thought that was so cool. Like when I saw him do protection, I was like hooked even more. I'm like, this is legit. It ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It changed my life.
You have to be good at people to be good at business.
Yeah.
And if you're not good at business, you probably have unpleasant customer experience with somebody that uses your services.
Yep. And for me, I was like, 20 grand in a month. Holy shit, dude. Like, that's crazy money to training dogs. I had no idea you could actually make a living training dogs.
I couldn't think of a better way that you would to work with a dog in a family.
Yeah. And then at that time, my wife, who was a nurse at Stanford, very bougie, prestigious hospital, she quit.
I love that.
Wild, brother.
Amazing story. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the A-Listers Show. My responsibility is to bring you movers and shakers, entrepreneurs, people doing interesting things and tell their stories. And today's guest is no different. Today we have Keith, and he's going to tell us all about his dog training business, and I'm looking forward to getting right into it. So, Keith, what is it that you do, and who are you?
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. So my name is Keith Bendixen. I own a company called Inclined Canine Academy. I am a dog trainer. My business model, how I do it, we do a couple different things. We have a program called Day Train, where the clients actually bring us the dog for 1 day a week. And then we train the dog throughout the day, and then the dog goes home at the end of the day. And we also do board and trains, where you drop your furry companion off to me, and then I keep it for about a month. And then it goes home at the end of the month. Where I teach you everything that I taught it over the course of the month.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And how'd you get into that?
So a little bit about my story. So I was an athlete. I played Division I football at San Jose State. Go Spartans, Spartan up.
Okay.
And that's kind of where my journey began. Being an athlete in college, all I thought about was playing in the NFL, right? That's like my dream. Got to go to the NFL, like make money, retire my family, right? Like do it big. Well, unfortunately, God had other plans. I ended up having a season-ending injury. I blew out my knee. I got rolled up on. It's kind of a lineman's worst nightmare. I was a lineman, O-line, where I actually blew out my knee. And it was extremely difficult, obviously, for me as a 20-year-old kid, kind of saying like, hey, like your season's over. Potentially your career is over, right? Like, and all I thought about was going to the NFL. And then it's like, hey, that's not going to happen anymore, or potentially it may never happen. And it was a very, very dark place for me during that time, man. I can 100% say I was depressed at that time. I had no purpose in life anymore. And I ended up doing one of the stupidest things ever. I got a puppy. Thank you, Nicole, my sister. She kind of spoiled me and was like, we got to get you something. And I really wanted a dog.
Couldn't find a girlfriend and say you need something.
Yeah. Thankfully, Kelsey, my wife now and girlfriend at the time, she stuck with me during that time. God, I don't know why, but she did. But yeah, I ended up getting a puppy. His name was Max. He was a German Shepherd. And very quickly we saw, I had no idea what I was doing. He was like barking at people, barking at dogs. I'm in my apartment complex with this crazy little German Shepherd.
In your
puppy.
apartment, you had a German Shepherd?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So stupid, dude. Like, so dumb. Like, you don't think about that stuff.
They're like, oh, it's so cute. Like, it's going to stay this size forever.
Yep. And oh my God, it was so dumb. But it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It changed my life. So I get Max. I'm in college, so I can't afford anything. I can't afford training. So I'm like, what the hell do I do? So I started YouTube, reading books, webinars. I was obsessed. I became obsessed with learning how to train Max. So I did a lot of stuff on my own. And then I met a guy at a dog park named Alonzo. And he ended up having me meet my mentor, who was Brent Cooper, who's one of the best dog trainers on the planet. But you've never heard of him because he does zero marketing, zero advertising. He's like everything we talk about not doing.
The 007 of dog trainers.
Dude, he's insane. But he's the best. So he gets all of his clients from word of mouth. Everybody recommends him, and he's insanely booked all the time because he's the best.
Yeah.
So when I met him, I was just hooked.
Yeah.
Like the way he handled dogs and trained and how he carried himself. And I just knew, right? I knew I met the guy. And it's funny now being in the inner circle with Mike, he talks about proximity.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 20-year-old kid. I had no idea what proximity was. I didn't think about that stuff, man, right? I was just thinking about playing football.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, what a blessing it was to be introduced to a guy like that. Dude, my dog training skills just went like through the roof right away.
You learned from him. He didn't teach you how to dog train. He taught you, he was basically helping to train your dog. And then from that, you learned these skills?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So he obviously helped me with Max. And then I really wanted to learn more. Like I loved what I could do with Max, but I was like, okay, how can I also do what I learned with Max with like my friends' dogs and my neighbors' dogs and my coaches' dogs? So I started volunteering. I went out every weekend. Like every time I had off, I was there. And I don't remember how long it took, but probably a couple of months. And then Brent looks at me and he goes, "You're never leaving, huh?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm staying." And it's kind of funny. Brent and his whole family, they're all black. And they always kind of make the joke like, you know, we know dogs the best because we're always running from them, and we always get bit by them, so we know how to train them the best. And I just I thought that was so funny. So I was like the token white guy there. But it was so cool, dude. Like the proximity, like just getting in the room with this guy, watching him and seeing how he operates and seeing how he trains.
Yeah.
God, it was so freaking cool. I was so lucky and fortunate to my first mentor was the shit.
Yeah.
Like the best guy. I could not have asked for a better
What
mentor.
stood out to you about the way that he was dealing with dogs?
So I think the main thing was, so in my area, in the Bay Area, there's a lot of dog trainers. And I obviously did my research being a young kid, like who I want to go to. And I went and saw a couple of them in my area, some kind of bigger name people. But I didn't like how they were. Like either the ego was really big or they talked more about like who they dog train. Like, oh, I trained so-and-so's dog. And you know,
Jessica Simpson's poodle, and I
it's
trained
like,
Britney
okay,
Spears.
Cool. And then they were like, yeah, I know I can train, your dog. And I'm like, all right. But like, I want to learn. I want the knowledge so that I can handle him when you guys aren't there. And when I met Brent, it was the opposite. He is the most humble dude I've ever met, but he is the best at what he does. And I thought that was so special. And I just was so attracted to train with him and work with him. Yeah. And 10 years later, man, like he's still my guy.
Nice.
He's still my mentor, man. And that's so, I'm like, again, so fortunate to meet a guy like that and to have him in my corner and made me who I am today.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point did you go off and start your own company?
Okay. So good question. So with that, my little side job was working for Brent. So I did that for like make a little extra money on the side. I also was training like my neighbors' dogs for free. And then I would charge I was charging like $35 a session, like crazy. But for me, I was good money in college. Making $35 for 1 hour I was like, dude, this is legit, do a couple lessons in a weekend. It's great money for me.
But so you'd only work a couple hours though, right?
Yes. I would do a couple sessions. I do a couple private lessons. And I just kept, kind of like, I was the guy, I lived in a place called Japantown in college, which is not too far from the campus, but tons and tons of dogs. And I kind of became the guy in that area. So I was just getting referred by a lot of people, and I just kept training people on the side, and then obviously working with Brent and helping him out. But little did I know, I didn't think you can make a career out of training dogs. I didn't think that was possible. So with Brent, he also pushed me to becoming a police officer because I really, really enjoyed the protection aspect of it, like sending dogs on people, having dogs bite people, having them come back. I thought that was so cool. Like when I saw him do protection, I was like hooked even more. I'm like, this is legit. If you've ever seen a dog bite someone and then have the ability to say stop, come back to you and lay down.
It's incredible.
It's like crazy, dude. It's like you literally have like a martial artist next to you.
You have a weapon.
You have a weapon.
A cannon. It's
yes. And then that weapon can be cool with your family.
Yeah.
Can be cool with your friends. And you say one word.
Protect your family.
Exactly.
Protect your own life.
Yep. Yeah.
And your children.
Yep.
So, I mean, just so I clarify, when you worked with the police, you were doing with the dog work as well?
Yeah.
Were you training dogs in the police?
Yeah. So once I worked with Brent, and then he pushed me to become a police officer, and I I never knew like really how much money dog trainers made. Like I was making, not that much money, like chunk change. So it was like, no, like I need to get a career. I was kind of like, hey, I need a career so I can make, good money, have a retirement, pension, all that stuff, right? The 9 to 5, the boring side. But obviously I really like the aspect of being a police officer. Me being a football player, like running after people, tackling, like that was fun for me. The report stuff writing was not fun, but the other stuff was fun. I like that.
Oh, you mean like tackling people in the police
like that stuff was fun to me. Like I like
Yeah, I
that.
bet.
Like, that's fun. I enjoyed that stuff. I was like, I'm getting paid to run after people and chase people. It's awesome. The report writing stuff, not so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went into the police world. I did that for about 8 years, and then during that, I continued training. Obviously, not at a big scale, but I continued training. And then kind of where I went. So I ended up specializing a lot in protection dogs. I kind of went that route. I went away from the pet dog world and went towards more of the working dog world. So I got very involved in training protection dogs, sport dogs, police dogs. I trained my very first police dog then, Obi, who is a police dog, a canine in Canada. And that was kind of like my introduction into the police dog world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is such a wild world. I'm so curious all about that.
Yeah.
So, okay, but I'll make sure I understand kind of the story transition first. So you kind of, you started working with the police and then also training protection dogs.
Yep.
And then you were still kind of operating that business on the side as you were running.
Yes, very small.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Just a few people, word of mouth, referrals.
Yes.
And then you got out of the police and you started working, kind of going in on your business.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
So a couple
How
things.
long ago was that?
So I resigned from my department in July of 2023. And a couple people asked me like, why did you leave? And I'll kind of get into that as far as the dog training stuff. But, for me, I was very fortunate. I worked at a really good agency. I was a canine handler there. I got to have a canine. It was awesome. It was a great experience. But for me, I'm very goal oriented, and I checked all those boxes. My dreams going into the police department was to make SWAT and make canine. And I did them both.
Wow.
And then I was kind of like, okay, what's the next thing? Mm-hmm. And then two things happened to me. So I'm a very big believer in everything happens for a reason. So for one, the very first one was me getting hurt, ended up me getting a dog. And then it totally transformed my life. And then as I was a police officer, two major things happened to me that kind of made me leave my job. One of them was that I was asked to mentor under one of the best protection dog trainers in the world. His name is Marco Coconsola, and he's the best. He's from Europe. He lives now in Oregon, in the United States, him and his wife, Sarah Prell. They own a company called Canamo, and they're the best, dude. Like, they're the shit. Nobody better than these two. And he asked me to mentor under him. And I'm like, yep, let me check my schedule. Yep, I'm free, Marco, whenever you need me. So I started mentoring with him and started traveling around with him while I was still a police officer. And it became very quickly, I was like, I can't do both, dude.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I was a canine and SWAT guy, so it's not like I'm a low officer.
Right.
Like I'm on call. I'm in one of the most busy spots in the department, most active spots. So that was one. And then the next one, and it's very weird how this all works. So you had Louis Torres on.
Yeah.
So for you guys that don't know, I actually was a client of Louis Torres. They reached out to me on Instagram to become a client for Unleashed Consulting. And that was when I signed up, was kind of my like, all right, let's see how I can do this dog training business thing with more like ads. Because I had never done Google ads before. I was always just word of mouth. Mm-hmm. So I started with him, and then he had this Unleash Your Business seminar consulting thing in North Carolina. And that was, I don't remember if it was in June or July of last year. And when I went there to actually meet them in person, that's where I met Louis in person. I met Mike Barron there in person. I met all these like big top guys, and they crushed my limiting belief, dude. I had no idea you could actually make a living training dogs.
What's a limiting belief?
So my limiting belief
What's a limiting belief?
So for me, it's like, it's what you believe. It's, oh, I can't do this because I'm not good enough. I can't train dogs because I don't have the time. I can't make money because I don't have the skill set. Whatever it was. And for me, it was, I can't make money being a dog trainer. Like, that's not a real job. I need to get a government job, right? I need a pension. I need retirement. I need benefits. That was in my brain. I had to do that. And when I went there, I was like, okay, you don't have to have that. You can go a different route.
Right.
And after meeting Louis, meeting Mike, I put in my 2 weeks as soon as I got back.
Wow.
I was like, I'm all in, baby. Let's go.
So what have you been doing since then? And so
Yep.
late 2023, now we're in 2024. What's your life been like so far?
It's been crazy, dude. I've never worked this much in my life.
Really?
It's insane. So when me leaving my police job, my very stable income, I didn't do it just without a plan. So with Louis, I ended up joining his inner circle. And what was very unique about his program, it was like 6 to 8 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but it was on how to get your dog training business going. And I was very unique in his group because I was the only dog trainer that started from zero.
Oh.
Everybody else already had established businesses. I had nothing. I was just trained dogs kind of on the side, my little side hustle. But for me, it was fine because it was just learning. So when I joined his inner circle and was learning, I just kept like implementing, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And Louis introduced me to a blue ocean. That blue ocean was day trains. This new dog training concept that's
Day trains?
Day trains. Yep. He introduced me to this new concept where the client drops the dog off to me in the morning, and then I have the dog for about 8 to 10 hours throughout the day. And then in that 8 to 10 hours, I do 6 to 8 training sessions. And then they come back in the evening, and then I have a go-home lesson with them, an hour-long private, essentially, where I teach them everything that I taught the dog. And the very unique thing about this program is it's a paid-for service, so they are paying me to train their dog, and they're also paying me for the mentorship. I'm also coaching them at the end of the day.
Right.
So it's very cool because at the end of the day, their dog is trained, and then they learn how to do it at home.
On top of that, the dog's not sitting at home alone while they're at work.
Yeah, exactly. And then they're learning how to do it. And it's like, okay, here's what I have week 1 for you. Okay, maintain this for the week. And the next week I have new skills. And every week it builds upon the last week. So it's a very, very cool program. It's a blue ocean for me. No one in my area is doing it. And it blew up, dude.
Wow.
Like the first month we started Inclined Canine Academy in September of 2023. We did 7 day trained dogs, which is roughly around 20K. And for me, I was like, 20 grand in a month? Holy shit, dude. Like, that's crazy money to training dogs. Crazy.
Unbelievable.
And then the next month it goes another 20 grand. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then we were booking out. And then I was like, okay, Louis, like, what's my next step? Okay, let's get into facility. So February of 2024, we found this beautiful 3-acre ranch in Morgan Hill. We ended up signing a short-term 3-month lease to just kind of see how my business would do there. Yeah, it did well. Like, it's a beautiful spot, and it blew up again. And then we started booking out for months again, and then we ended up signing a year-long lease to actually live on the property in May of 2024.
Wow.
And then at that time, my wife, who was a nurse at Stanford, very bougie, prestigious hospital, she quit.
I love that.
Wild, brother.
Amazing story.
And it's funny with my wife, because I know that is also a dream of yours.
It is. I'm working on it.
I had the same dream. When I first met with Mike and Louie, I said, I want my wife to quit her job. I want to make enough money that I can have my wife quit and do our dream. Our dream was always to have a ranch and dog training, but we had our limiting belief. We thought we have to work a 9-to-5 job, have our pension, have our retirement, and then we can have that dream. It never was clear to us that we can do it now. And here we are.
Amazing.
A few months later.
Yeah.
Wild.
Happened quick too.
So fast.
So quick.
Every week, dude, it's like something new, more growth, more people. Staff now. I have 7 employees, dude. 7 employees.
Wow.
I could barely keep track of myself, and now I got to supervise 7 people. It's insane.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
So you have this 3-acre place, and you guys moved on there.
Yep, but now we're living there full time.
Do people have to drive out there every day, or do you pick up the dogs?
Yeah, good question. So fortunately, our ranch, where it's at, it's not that far off of the freeway. So most of the clients drop off. We have a couple that we've kind of arranged with one of my trainers that they can drop off with her because she lives in San Jose. So it's about a 20, 25-minute drive. But I think that will kind of be something in the future that we'll offer. But fortunately, the drive isn't too bad. So most of the clients drop off at the ranch in the morning.
Yeah. What an amazing program. So first of all, you train the dogs, which is needed.
Yep.
The dogs aren't sitting at home for all day while
Yeah.
you're at work and you're
Yeah.
anxious. Are they making a mess? Are they, are they sad?
Yep.
And then you provide training to the actual owner, which is how can you train a dog without training the owner?
Correct.
I mean, it's a relationship. You're,
Yeah.
you're basically coaching the relationship, so it's 100% necessary. So I couldn't think of a better way that you would, to work with a dog in a family.
Yeah. But it's funny because so the unique thing about dog training is like this day train program it's a fairly new concept, but the old attitude was like, no, we just train the dogs. We don't really train the owners.
Yeah.
And a lot of trainers believe that. They just, I'm going to train the dog. I don't want to deal with the owner. And kind of a funny thing, like this is going to kind of ruffle some feathers, so sorry. Most dog trainers are fucking weird, awkward people.
Because they spend all their time around animals.
They hate people. They love dogs.
Yeah.
They don't like people.
That's funny. I can see that happening because people get into it. They're like, oh yeah, I love dogs. I love dogs.
Yes.
I hate people. I hate people.
Yep.
And
They
they're
hate the
like,
clients.
Yeah. They hate
Yep.
the clients. Yeah.
Yep.
And plus, a lot of times I just get the feeling, like, this may be totally stereotypical, but maybe if you're good with dogs, you might not be good at business.
Yeah. Yes,
Because
and
I feel
then-
like people, you have to be
Yeah.
good at people to be good at business.
Yeah.
And if you're not good at business, you probably have an unpleasant customer experience.
Correct.
Somebody that uses your services.
Yep. And that's a very common problem in the dog world is like, yeah, the dog is very well trained, but the customer service was horrible. They never got back. Like dog trainers are notorious, dude. They never got back to me on time. They're not following up with me because they're too busy training dogs. And
Yeah.
like I agree that is part of it, but it's also just kind of part of the personality.
Yeah.
Dog trainers like to kind of go and hide. They take your dog for a month and then they're just kind of like they're working the dogs. It's not about that. It's just about they don't like the communication aspect. And
Yeah.
for me, I believe why I am extremely successful in that part is because I have a high ticket skill set, which is communicating and talking to people at a high level.
Yeah.
Being a police officer, I learned that on the street, how to talk to suspects. If you're a dick to suspects, they're not going to work with you. So I'm a big dude, right? I'm kind of a big goofy guy. That's how I policed. And you would be surprised at how many guys would give me permission to search them, search their cars, even though they had drugs on them or guns on them. They'd be like, yeah, man, go ahead, dude. You're cool.
You're a nice guy.
It's like, oh, what's this? Oh, damn, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Versus if you're the big asshole, like, 'cause I'm a big guy.
Yeah. People get defensive.
And that's like, I had to learn that as a cop.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to police the way that worked for me.
Yeah.
And the way that I did it was being a big, goofy, dumb cop.
Wow.
I played like I was an idiot. Like, oh yeah, man, cool. What's going on? Okay, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Uh-huh.
But in my mind, I'm messing with them.
Yep.
I'm figuring out, okay, how am I going to get in this guy's car? How am I going to get into their pockets? How am I going to get them to cooperate with me? And it helped me because then I wouldn't have uses of force. I wouldn't get complaints. I mean, obviously I had them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I was perfect, but that's what got me out of a lot of trouble.
Wow.
Because I learned how to talk to people. And it's so funny because now in the dog training world, it's the same thing. I'm constantly dealing with drama between the owners.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't fix Fluffy, Fluffy's going bye-bye. And the girlfriend or wife's like, no, you can't get rid of the dog. I'm like, it's like I'm at work. Same thing. And I learned how to communicate with them effectively, pull on the pain points, easy.
Wow.
And that's why we've been so successful.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about dog training itself.
Okay.
So, these days you're kind of doing both, the protection services, but you're also doing a lot of the in-home
Pet,
stuff.
yeah, pet stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm only doing pet stuff now.
Okay.
I am out of the working dog world temporarily. I can't wait to get back, but I got to get my brick and mortar business like going, running, and then hopefully I can start dabbling back into the protection police dog stuff. That's where my true passion, like I really, really like that. It's so fun for me. It's not work.
Yeah.
So the goal is to get back to doing that once the business is going on its own.
Well, what are some of the biggest issues that you see when somebody comes to you with a new dog or a new client that comes to you?
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges that you're trying to help them solve?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest problem we're having right now is reactivity issues. So what is reactivity? Reactivity is the dogs are barking at people. The dogs are barking at other dogs. They can be really skittish, spooky, not socialized properly. We're getting that constantly. It's very rare we get a dog that doesn't have those issues. Sometimes we do, like, hey, I just want my dog kind of trained, so I could take it more places. But most of the time, I can't take my dog outside because it barks at everybody. I can't take my dog outside because it barks at other dogs. So yeah, that's our biggest, that's our avatar.
So they're just noisy.
Yep.
You can't really enjoy taking them out.
Nope. Because they're pulling, they're barking at people, they're barking at other dogs, right? They're aggressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And what do you think is like one of the biggest things that people need to understand in order to deal with that in their home? How do you fix that?
Yeah. So it's a really good question, and it depends on, you have to figure out and isolate, okay, where is the reactivity coming from? And for me, I like to explain it. Typically, there are two different pathways for aggression. One pathway is it's coming more out of a frustration behavior, meaning the dog has like played with everybody. It goes and says hi to everybody. And now you have this little thing on a harness. And now you're saying, no, you can't go say hi to everybody. And it starts getting overly aroused. It starts getting frustrated. And then in the dog psychology world, frustration typically is going to lead to aggression. So if you've ever heard like leash reactivity, we're like, oh, my dog's very friendly off the leash. But as soon as I put the leash on, the dog's barking at everybody. Yeah, because you are preventing it from doing what it wants. So it's like a little kid throwing a temper tantrum in the store, right? I want this candy. No. No, Mom. Right. Okay, fine. It's not really aggressive. It's a bluff. It's like, hey, I let me go. Come on, let me go play with these dogs. So that is most of the time the problem is overly aroused. Their emotions, they don't know how to control, so they blow up, right? They have a reaction. And what we're finding is that's usually pretty common, and that's very easy to fix. Learning some leash manners, how to teach the owners how to keep the arousal level low, pretty simple. And this is what very common why, like, you know, the German Shepherds, the Belgian Malinois, right? They're barking at everybody because they're super overly excited, overstimulated dogs. Yeah. Like ADD, man. They're just always going and going and going. Yeah. And then you don't know that and you're trying to hold it back. There goes your aggression. There's your frustration behavior. So we call that more of a pre-frustration behavior, stimulus oriented. And that's pretty easy to fix. It's more just arousal level, leash manners. Okay. Not super difficult. So those ones I'm like, yeah, these are no problem. And then you have the other side. Then you have more the, like what I call a true aggression, where it's coming more out of like fear. Fear of, it could be the unknown. It could be fearful of people. Maybe it had a bad experience with somebody, or fearful of other dogs. Maybe your poor puppy got attacked. And then it's like, fuck other dogs, man. They're assholes. I don't like other dogs. And it's like, stay away from me. So in training, we kind of have a funny thing. Dogs bark for two reasons. Either to bring the thing closer to them, the pre-frustration, the frustration behavior, like come on, I wanna get to you, or they're barking to keep things away from them. More the aggression, more the defense, fearful side. The fearful side is extremely hard to fix, and sometimes it's not really fixable. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And as a trainer, that's one where you're like, yeah, like I tell people, like, let's see, like. I can't say, oh yeah, this is an easy dog to fix. If it's a pre-frustration dog, when I do my evals, my transformation sessions, I'm like, easy. I can see that in a few seconds. But the real aggression, defense, fearful, it's hard, man. Depends on where that's coming from. Right. Usually if it's coming from experiences, like the dog had a bad experiences, dogs are very unique. Obviously they think about the past, but they're living in the now. They don't think about the future like we do. We're always like, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? And dogs don't think like that. They think about the now. So they're not thinking about future things. So if I can create new experiences for the dog, positive ones, with other dogs or people, let's say they're a little bit fearful of both, the dog's like, hey, this dog was actually really cool. Okay, wow, this person actually gave me a cookie. Okay, I'm going to keep going towards this guy. And then I can start making new associations and new experiences for the dog, and then that can overcome. So it's kind of like rehab for the dog. And I can make new experiences and get the dog over those fearful situations and make new ones. Yeah. And then the dog is fixed. But sometimes, unfortunately, you have a dog, either the experience was too severe, or genetically they were unfortunately had some bad genetics, bad nerves that you just can't fix. And that is common too, it happens. And for those dogs, people are like, well, how do you fix those dogs? You're more managing the dog at that point. You have a very different conversation with the owner. Like, hey, you always have to watch your dog. This dog is not going to be fixed. But hopefully you can train the dog so well that you don't see those issues. My biggest compliment whenever I train one of those dogs is people are like, man, that's a nice dog. And then like deep down, I'm like, dude, this is not a nice dog. Like this dog has shit nerves. It's scared of everything, but the training is so good, you can't tell.
Can't tell.
You can't tell. It's
Yeah.
a bluff. And that's like my goal as a trainer. Like, okay, how can I make every dog good like that where you can't tell if it's a bad dog or if it's a really, really good dog?
Do you think that it's more important, like, which has a bigger impact, training the person or training the dog, or are they equally important?
Yeah, that's really good. For me, I think people, because dog training is not that difficult. It's not a, we're not doing rocket science, right? Like I know, I love Mike's little, hey, Elon's sending people to Mars, man. Like, I'm just training dogs. It's not that difficult. Obviously, some dogs are going to be more challenging than others, and for sure, there are trainers that are much better at those kind of a dogs. But if we take the basic dog, dude, you can go on YouTube and learn how to train a dog. It's not that hard. But for me, what I have found, my truth, me seeking out in the universe, is how can I teach people better? And that's with my high ticket skill set of talking and communicating to people, teaching people. I'm kind of a geek with that. So like, let's talk about the adult learning theory. It's shit. You remember 10% of what you hear. So in my hour-long lesson, the client is only going to remember 10% of my lesson. That is horrible.
Yeah.
So how do I make that better? So then we talk about we can make them read something. So I have Word documents. I have an online university for my clients. So they read what I am teaching them. I also have videos on what I teach. So before they even come to me for their lesson, they've already read what I'm going to teach them. They've already watched videos on it. I show them that in person. I have them do it, the kinesthetic part, and then we talk about it, and they do it again, and we talk about it again and again until they're doing it right.
So they're seeing it, they're reading it, they're hearing it, they're doing it, watching it.
Yep.
They're tasting it, they're smelling it.
All of their senses, right? And that's what we've learned. Like, the lecture is shit. It does not work for most people. So obviously some people can pick it up quick, and I'm sure like being in school, some people could and some people couldn't. I was not like that. I had to read it, talk about it, do it. And so I've taken what I've learned as a cop, as a student being in college and in athletics, and I'm applying that to our clients because I have to teach them. They're paying me a price to teach them, to mentor them. And if I'm not doing that, I'm just training their dog. I'm falling short on that.
Right.
And then you're going to have more problems because the dog is trained for you. It's not trained for the owner. And as soon as that leash goes back, dude, it's hilarious. As soon as that leash goes back, man, that dog is like, whoop, all right, I'm doing this again. It's funny.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it happens.
Because there's context switching as humans as we do it, right? Like if I am in, I go to school, I have to act a certain way. But if I go to my parents' house and they let me act up a fool, or I go to grandma's house and she's stricter, right?
Yep.
It's like as soon as I walk in that door, I know grandma's strict, and so I can't mess around.
Nope, you nailed it on the head. Yeah. Dogs are extremely contextual learners.
Yeah.
Way better than us, man. That is how they think and how they operate.
Right.
So you have to think about that and we have to keep that going. I have to teach the owners how they can do this at home when I'm not there. Then you kind of got into there's a dog terminology called generalization. And all that means is, can the dog do what it learns at my facility, at your home, downtown, at the beach, at the park? Can the dog generalize the behavior like, oh, okay, like I'm in a new area, but the owner's telling me to let's say heel, walk nicely with me. Okay, I've done it here, but in a new area, it might look at you like, I've never done this before. It's kind of funny when you start to take the dog out. Part of our training sessions is we take the dog out to real world. We go downtown, we go to parks and stuff. And your first session, the dog is like, whoa, I've never been here. They might look at you like,
I like your dog impression, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny, dude. They get out of our sprinter van and they're like, what? Where am I?
Yeah.
And then you're telling them come on, and they're like, uh-oh, I don't know about this. But that's very normal. And for me, I know this as a trainer, so I work the dog through that. So that way, when the owner comes and does their private, the dog's killing it already. And I just teach the owner hey, this is what you're going to experience in the real world. This is how you get them over it.
Yeah.
So that way, when the owner goes to the cool places to train, they already know that. Not like, hey, Keith, I took my dog out and it was spooked of everything, or it was really weird and it wasn't listening. That's a very common problem. It's like, well, yeah, that's expected. You have to keep working it to get it over that. And then it's like, oh, okay, same thing. Yeah. So I know this, and I always teach my owners how to work through that.
Yeah, and that whole what do you call it, generalized training.
Yep.
we have that as humans too, where it's like, okay, I know this person from someplace.
Yes.
And then I go to a different location and I see that person and I can't quite spot that face because I'm used to a certain context.
Yep.
And so learning can really be contextual. And so
Absolutely.
You incorporating the different locations as part of your training, I can imagine that being just huge.
It's huge. Yeah. So part of our day train program, board and train program is the first half of training, the first 3 weeks or the 50% is at the ranch because I can control the environment. Environment's huge, right? The distractions we have, we talk about in training, we have the 3 Ds of dog training: distance, duration, and distractions. And distractions are typically always hard for people, right? Like, oh, my dog listens great when there's no distractions. But then as soon as you add another dog into the mix or their favorite person, you lose the dog. So at the ranch, I can control that. I can create the environment. I can cause problems when I need to, and then take away problems if I don't need them. So once the dog is very proficient at the ranch, and they're doing it with distractions, other dogs, people, et cetera, at the ranch with the owners, then I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do it in the real world where we can't control it. I have a saying, if you train with me, the only thing that you can control is your dog. You can't control other dogs as much as you want to. You can't control people. I'm sure you guys have seen all the stupid YouTube videos of crazy dogs off leash or people letting their dog come up to your dog.
Yeah.
You can't control them. You can't. As much as you try to, and you can't.
People won't ask before they pet your dog.
Exactly. So I have to.
Can I talk?
Yeah. Yep. But so I have to teach the dogs how they can take that
Right.
and how they can deal with it. So part of training is stress. You have to, and this sounds like horrible for people, but you have to stress dogs out to teach them how to work through it. And that's another thing that I find with owners now. We live in a world where we want zero stress.
Yeah.
Stress for people, for our kids, for our dogs. We want them to have the most comfortable life.
Yep.
And then as soon as you get a little bit of stress, you freak.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with owners with their dogs.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that was not a thing or wasn't as well known. Now it's like, oh, we want the perfect life for my dog was a rescue and it had a hard life. How do you know that?
Yeah.
All of our lives are hard. Life is hard.
Yeah.
You're going to get stressed. People are going to get stressed. Kids are going to get stressed. Dogs are going to get stressed. But I can create the stress and I can make the stress go away when I need it to. And I teach the dogs how to work through that stress. And that's why I believe like our program is really good because of that. But I also know how to create the stress, like productive stress.
Right.
Not just stressful being hard on dogs. That's
Right.
completely different. That was kind of the old school style of training where we were really, really hard on dogs to get dogs to do behaviors. Now we actually can get dogs that are happy and that want to work. But that's done through stress, productive stress.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me more about what makes your program different.
Yeah. So my Blue Ocean. So the day train program for me has been my Blue Ocean. So trainers in my area or everywhere, right? It's board-in trains where you leave the dog for training or private lessons, group classes. It's all the same stuff. Everyone's doing the same thing. But for me, when I got introduced to this day train program of, hey, how can I make my board and train where I'm guaranteeing off-leash freedom for dogs? How can I make that into a day train program?
Guaranteeing off-leash?
Yep, off-leash for your dog.
Wow.
So in my board and train, I have a 4-week board and train program. And I guarantee the dog can be off-leash at that point.
Wow, what an incredible claim.
Yes. So and that's what's funny is that, depending obviously on the dog and stuff, like if the dog is, let's say a normal dog, no behavioral issues, easy. And then obviously if you have a dog that's way more reactive or more fear-based, then it's a different conversation. Like, hey, yeah, your dog can be off leash. You probably don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
But at least letting the owners have the ability.
Yeah.
And you have to know your avatar. Does your avatar even want the dogs to be off leash? In my area, they do. In my area, there's really nice hiking, there's beaches, there's parks. They want that ability to have the dog off leash.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're not going to walk downtown with your dog.
Yeah, those
off
guys like
leash.
me that would prefer that dogs stay on leash. So-
Yes, exactly. And it just depends on what you want.
Yeah.
But like for me as a trainer, like I want you to have that ability
Yeah.
so you can always do it if you want to. But yeah, I mean, most of our clients are going to keep them on leash when they walk around.
Yeah.
But teaching the owners how to have the ability to have their dog off leash. How can you take your dog to the beach and feel comfortable letting the leash off?
Right.
And that's me teaching them how to use e-collars. Versus just like, okay, here, push this button. It's like, no, how to actually use it properly. A lot of my training is how to teach the owners how to use e-collars.
Right.
Every lesson I'm talking about e-collar, and you do this and do this. So at the end, the owners are very proficient in using it.
I see.
Because that's gonna be their go-to.
Yeah.
That's how we're gonna get the dogs off leash.
Yeah.
They're animals. At the end of the day, we have to remember dogs are animals. even the most highly trained, like even my police dog, I would never, ever take my dog out of the car if he didn't have an e-collar on.
Mm-hmm.
I would never send him down range unless I had a way to get him back with a remote.
Right.
And people are like, oh, you should be a good enough trainer to never have to rely on that. Yeah, sure. Come train my dogs. I would love to watch you train. Unfortunately, dogs are opportunistic creatures. And especially when you're training bite dogs, the dog's like, do I come back to you or do I bite this guy a little bit more?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to have some way to communicate with the dogs to come back to you or to listen. And that's how I like to teach e-collars. It's more of a communication tool. Mm-hmm. When we first start training with e-collars, because a lot of people have a lot of they're horrible, they're killing dogs, whatever. We like to use e-collars as a communicative tool to communicate with the dog what we want them to do. How do we do that? We teach them at very, very low levels, like a fly landing on your neck.
Tell me more about the police dogs and the bite dogs. What is
Yes.
that? What is that like training those people, those dogs?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that help that carry over to working with domestic dogs?
Yes. So it's very funny. People always ask, like, if you train police dogs, you got to be the best dog trainer, and you have to have, like, not really.
That's what I think.
Yeah, like you think that
You got to be, because you need that caliber of training needs to be top.
correct. But it's actually kind of funny. If you watch most police dogs train, training is actually pretty bad because it's just kind of like, yeah, I have this cool tool, but most handlers don't really take the time to train the dog to its optimal potential, or the training is so outdated that it's like, what are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, unfortunately, just the way it goes, there's a lot of police dog trainers that have been training dogs for a long time. And of course, when they were in their peak, they were the best.
Right.
But now with new training styles, like training is much better now than a lot of the trainers. So yeah, you may have really high caliber dogs, but the training isn't there.
Right.
Or on the other side, you have really, really good training, but very, very low caliber dogs. So in the police dogs, one of the biggest things that we look for is, can the dog by itself do the job with no help? We want absolute freak of natures. We don't want the dog, we have to like, okay, buddy, like you're going to go in there and find the bad guy. It's like you have a monster that you're just holding onto the leash and he's ready to do his job.
Wow.
That's what you want. Zero help.
It's like you have this big force of power.
Yep.
And then through training, you're able to control that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just controlling their aggression.
Yeah.
We want the dogs that naturally have good forward aggression. They like fighting. Think about like you do jujitsu, right?
Yeah.
Think about the guys who do MMA.
Yeah.
You guys are all a little crazy up in the head, like you like that stuff.
Yeah.
And
But
there are dogs that like that.
You get guys that come into the gym and they're just like, they have this crazy aggression and they go
Yep.
crazy, and then all of a sudden they burn out and they get injuries and
Yep.
stuff. But the ones that succeed are the ones that are able to take that aggression and channel it towards being intelligent.
Yes.
And learning proper technique.
Yep.
And that is how you can then execute and actually start winning fights.
Exactly.
And so it comes down to being able to channel that energy.
Yep.
And that comes to having a good coach.
Yes. And like we always say, you have to have the right dog.
Yeah.
And then obviously if you can have the right training, perfect. The
Yeah.
unfortunate part is, and a lot of people don't know this, is like most police dog trainers or most police agencies, they don't have an official trainer. It's like, hey man, like you had a dog right out on the street. You're the head trainer. And you're like, dude, I've had one dog and I went to a 4-week school and you're training these dogs. Narcotics detection, bite work, tracking, obedience, and you've had one dog.
Wait, so is the training in the police typically done from a third party, or is it done from somebody that's in the force?
Yeah, good question. It depends. Every agency is different. Some are in-house where it's an officer or a senior handler. Some have a third-party vendor that trains them. But what I've kind of found, depending on where you work too, like obviously California, like kind of the West Coast is usually ahead in that game because we obviously are the most strict with policing out here, right? We're kind of we always kind of laugh like California kind of sets the standard for the rest of the country, right? You go somewhere else, it's a very different style of policing. And that's very common with dog training as well. With police dog training in different parts of the states, it's very different, very old school stuff. So it just depends on where you work. Fortunately for us, the agency that I worked at, we had outside vendors that were trainers. And so for them, like they weren't police officers, they were dog trainers.
Right.
So it worked in our favor because they were dog trainers. That was their job. It wasn't like, hey dude, like you've been a cop for a while, you can be the dog trainer.
Right.
I had a unique skill set because I also was a dog trainer at the same time.
Right.
So that really like helped me obviously in that sense.
Yeah, and I'm curious about that. So you had some experience dog training.
Yep.
And then you joined the force. And so how did they allow you the opportunity to then work with dogs and then also be the dog trainer?
Yeah. So what's unique about where my story is when I became a cop at the original agency that I started at, I tried to start a canine program, and the like vice president of the university that I worked at, they weren't interested in starting a canine unit. So I ended up leaving that department, going to a new department. And then at the new department that I was at, the trainers that we worked with, I didn't really agree with them in a lot of ways. So I had obviously some battles to overcome, a lot of obstacles. And a lot of people don't know this, but when I made canine, I was a canine handler for a year before I got my dog. They made, I had to wait a year, which is kind of insane. Usually you get your promotion. Okay, you go ahead. And I had to wait a year to find a dog. And
Is that because they just didn't have a dog?
Sure.
Okay.
I think there was a lot more personal issues.
I see.
That's a different podcast.
Okay.
But I was ready to resign because it was 11 months before I actually got a dog because they couldn't find one, or the dogs they found that we tested were pretty bad, not the right dog, obviously, what I talked about. So, for me, it was kind of I really want to be a canine handler. That was my dream. But then obviously there are external forces at play. Are you going to keep dealing with that? And it caused me obviously a lot of grief, or do you do something else?
Yeah.
Well, my other thing was my pet business started getting really busy. So again, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Obviously my dream was to be a canine handler, but then with me not getting it right away, I got to focus on something else. So when I actually did become a canine handler, I was like, all right, cool. All right, I'm doing my own business now.
Yeah. So, and I want to talk a little more about the training of these dogs.
Yep.
How do you take a dog and get it to be able to bite somebody?
Yep.
Or smell out narcotics or explosives?
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk about bite work first.
Okay.
So the first thing that we look for is the dog genetically gifted? Meaning, can the dog do this on their own? So obviously we're going to look at dogs that are more predispositioned to show those things. Your German Shepherds, your Belgian Malinois, those are typically the Dutch Shepherds. Those are your most common police dogs because genetically they come out of the womb ready to bite. You guys, I'm sure for the Maligator, right? These little Malinois are just biting everybody.
Yeah.
So genetically they are already predispositioned to bite. So you talked about, you channel that into biting people.
Right.
And it's really not that difficult. You teach them initially how to bite little tugs, little sleeves, and then you start transitioning that onto people. And you just keep going down that route. And there's obviously different pathways to do that. But obviously for us as training police dogs, we really want the police dogs to be more focused on the man. So a lot of our training also in the beginning, we call it the boogeyman, which is where we teach these puppies at 8 weeks old how to bark at people.
Oh, wow.
But it's contextual. It's in the same place. The dog is wearing a harness. It's in this unique area. So the dog only gets to show that aggression in one area. But with that puppy, we want the puppy obviously to, if the puppy is very reactive, like I was talking about earlier, where it's more fear, where the puppy's barking at everybody, those aren't good dogs to do that with because we don't want them to learn to bark at everybody. It's just in one context because we want the dog to be social. We really want now social butterflies with our dogs, with our police dogs. Yeah. Because the way we're using dogs now is very different than what it was 20 years ago.
They have to be able to be around kids and stuff.
Kids and other department members. Yeah. And now how we're using our dogs in the police force and searching. I'm with my dog and there's 10 guys with me on a SWAT call.
Right.
My dog has to be very cool with everybody in the staff.
Yeah, they got helmets on. They got big equipment.
And it's got to be hey, bro, these guys are all off limits.
Yeah.
But they have to know that and they have to be okay with it.
Yep.
So now the way we kind of look at dogs is we want more of a prey-oriented prey monster, meaning they're all about biting. They're not really the defensive, spooky dogs that are just bite everybody. That was kind of the old school dogs, right? You've heard of the old school police dogs that are bite everybody but the handler. We don't want those dogs anymore.
Right.
We don't breed those dogs anymore. Those dogs are being bred out. Now we're breeding these prey monsters. But the hard part with prey monsters is they can become very equipment oriented because they want prey. They want equipment. Sorry. So you have to teach them at a young age that it's not about the equipment, it's about the man. Then you have no issues. As long as you can do it right. But there's obviously people come to me to help them fix those problems and it's not that difficult. But again, as long as you train and get the right dog and develop it the right way and channeling that aggression, it's easy, dude. It's the dog. We always laugh you're just the idiot holding the leash. Your dog's doing everything.
Yeah.
You just handle them.
Now, are dogs that we'll say sniff narcotics and explosives the same ones that they use to find people, like missing people?
Yeah, good question. So when you're doing detection, usually you want to stick with the same thing. So like if you have a narcotics dog, you're going to stick to narcotics. You don't want to kind of combine narcotics and explosives at the same time. People is obviously a totally different odor. So yeah, you could have your narcotic dog also be a tracking dog, or your explosive dog be a tracking dog. It's just depending on what kind of dog you have. So typically, kind of the way things are working now is the searching dogs for narcotics or explosives, we're kind of going away from the pointy ear, meaning like the Malinois, the German Shepherds, we're going more floppy ear. The Labs, the German Shorthair Pointers, they're more the hunting dogs because they're more friendly. You could take them everywhere, right? And you're working in an airport or you're like TSA, you don't want a bitey dog in those situations typically, right? You want a friendly dog that's just going around and smelling people. So it depends on what your mission is, what's your objective. So with those dogs, yes, you can mix. Like my dog, for instance, and when I worked, he was apprehension, so he was a bite dog, and he also was an explosive dog. But for him, he also was very social. So he was a very well-rounded dog in that sense, where I could do both. But also, if I were to do tracking with him, he liked to track, to find, and bite people. So like for him, if I was going to track, like let's say,
I found the hostage.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, know your objective. It probably wouldn't be the best thing for him.
Right.
Because you'd have to really micromanage him, like not let him get very far away from you. Versus you have like a hunting dog, let that bad boy go, man. You're just following him.
Right.
It depends on the mission.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next for you? You started your police career.
Yep.
You left and you started your own company.
Yep.
You learned everything about dog training. You've grown your company to have your amazing location, the 3 acres in the Bay Area.
Yep.
And now what?
Okay, so now my objectives is I really want to get staffing at my facility so that way I can focus on the bigger picture, right? So now I've really heavily developed my trainers and my staff. So that way, like if I have to leave, if I have to go do something else, the business continues to run.
Yeah.
It's a very weird phenomenon in anything that we do. So I obviously sought the best training to develop myself as one of the best trainers. Now that kind of switches. Now I'm not really developing myself as like the best trainer. I'm developing myself as hopefully the best business owner.
Yeah.
But I'm training my trainers and empowering them for them to become the best dog trainers. So like at the end of this month, for instance, in July, we're going to go train with one of the best dog trainers in the country. We're going to spend a week with her to train because I want my trainers to get that experience that I had before. Because I want to empower them, right? I want to give them power. I want to flow them power so they can focus on the product. That we're going to maintain a really, really high standard and be the best dog trainers in our area. And then I can focus on the bigger picture, right? I can be the founder. I can bring in more clients.
Yeah.
I can feed them more dogs to train. Obviously, yes, I still love training dogs, but I'm in a weird spot now where I'm not training as many dogs. Now I'm focusing on the bigger picture.
Right.
So that's really where like I see myself going now. I really want to get more involved in the community. Being a police officer, I was very heavily involved with community stuff. I think just me being like a personable, goofy dude, like I like those events and I did well because people are like, wow, like you're like a normal person. Like, yeah, like I know I'm a cop, but I'm still a normal guy. I wasn't the robot. So community service was also very big for me as a police officer. So for me, I want to get more involved in my local community. So we're already talking about doing like a big event for a local shelter at one of our big restaurants. So that's kind of like my next thing is like, okay, now how are we going to even take over like and grow more in my city. There's not really many dog trainers in my city specifically. So I'm in a blue ocean and I really want to establish myself and become the guy in my city. That's really where I'm focusing now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're just about out of time, but I want to know, is there something else that maybe we forgot to talk about? Anything else you want to mention or any other message you'd like to tell people?
Yeah, I would just say like if you you're on the fence about either getting training for your dog or kind of following like your dreams in that sense, I would say find the right information. Like, and if you don't know where the right information is, search it, seek it, and you shall find it. I sought it out. I found it with Louie. I found it with Mike, and it's completely changed my life in a year. And if I can do it, I'm a big dumb cop. I was a football player. I have CTE brain. We always joke about that, right? Like, if I can do it, dude, anybody can do it. I'm no smarter than anybody else. I'm a normal dude. and we're doing it.
Come on now. There we go. Love that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. This has been another amazing episode of the A-Lister Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, interact with the video. That helps to share our message with more of the world. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find you?
Yes. So I have my personal brand, Keith Bendixen. You can find me at Keith B Canine on Instagram and Facebook. And then my company name is called Incline Canine Academy. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. And we also have a free course for you guys. It's called The Perfect Recall. Teaches you how to teach your dog how to come back, man. That's what everybody wants. Perfect. How can I get my dog to come back? And I have a really, really good course. I spent a lot of hours on it. And it's taken me about 10 years to like perfect the recall. And I think, and I found the best way to do it. So check out that free course, man. And let me know how it goes. I'm excited to see it.
10 years of knowledge condensed to one free course.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one.